Well, I never know quite where to start because our story really is very crazy and it has a lot of twists and turns, and I'm very blessed and honored to have one of my children here tonight. Luann, will you wave at everybody? She is. My husband and I had 6 children, and so we had 4 sons, and then we had twin daughters, and this is one of them. With the little girl, she gave us our first granddaughter. We had 2 grandsons. So it's fun to have her here. And so I like to start my talks with like a couple questions. And the first question is, have you ever in your life felt like it was like it's over? This is the end, nothing good could come out of this. And you just felt like, I don't know, you fill in the blank. Anybody? Yeah. The last talk I did, one older gentleman sat in the front row and he just shook his head, no, never had that. And I was like, lucky you. Anyway, we had several phases that felt like that when we started on our journey of coming out of the Amish. So for my husband and I, some people, they're here one day and then the next day they just take this giant leap of something, faith, I guess, and they're just suddenly, you know, they change everything. They get rid of their Amish clothes, they get rid of their horse and buggy. But for my husband and I, it took us literally 10 years. 10 years. And I think part of that reason was because I am one of 9 children. So I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters, and I'm the middle child, and I'm the only one that has left the Amish way of life. So that was a really big deal for my family, and it was. I think I can use the word excruciating at times to see what we're doing to their hearts, and yet seeing what we saw. You know, for the first time, we were seeing like I say it this way. I feel like the Amish have a lot of truth, but just, you know, maybe half, they have half of the truth. And so we started seeing the other half and following that, and it was so liberating and so hard at the same time. But it seemed like every time we were kind of ready to give up or feel like, okay, this is just too hard, then we would get another glimpse of something that just kept us taking another step in faith and another step, and all of a sudden one day we look back, and my husband, I love how he says it. He says we were never looking to leave our Amish culture, and that is the truth. We were not looking to do that. We were just hungry for the truth. We were hungry for more of God, and it led us out. We look back 10 years later, and it was actually my Amish mom that brought it to my attention. We were still calling ourselves Amish, and one day she told me, I wish you would quit doing that, because you are not Amish anymore. And it was kind of like a wake-up call for us, like, and she was right. We had left, we were driving cars, we had changed our clothes, and it was so exciting. But to get to that point is, I'll start in the front. I try and condense it, because it would take a couple books to write our entire story. So I didn't even go, I'll be honest up front, I didn't even go into the deepest details here. I started writing my childhood story, and I was just writing away, you know, every detail, all the pain, all the sad things, all the good things too. But my father was actually an alcoholic in the Amish community, which is more common now than I realized. They can just hide it really well. So I started writing that story, and one day I was just like, I just felt like this prompting from God that that is not the time. It's not time for that story. My mom's still alive, my brothers and sisters, I have a good relationship with them now again, and I just felt like I do not jeopardize that. So I quit writing that, and I was disappointed, and I was, okay, well, what can I do? So I woke up, and I knew one morning that I get to write a devotional, and I get to write about coming out of the Amish, honoring my culture a lot, and also writing about some of the hard things of how it was to come out. And I write about our current life now, and I tie it all together with a Bible verse. And so this is like a 365 devotional. So you will read, you'll read about my dad, you'll read about my siblings, you'll read about my mom a lot. I write about my mom a lot. She was My mom is still, in spite of everything she put us through when we were leaving, she is still one of my heroes, because she had to be super strong because Dad being an alcoholic, she was forced to raise us kids and take care of the finances and the farm. So I grew up in southern Iowa on a dairy farm. Today, if I had to, I could still milk a cow by hand. Grew up, chores every morning, every night, walked to school. No matter what the weather was, we walked to school. My husband also my husband's story in itself would take another book, and he's writing his book, but he was born into what we Amish people call the Englishers. You guys are all Englishers, okay? Even though you're not. But he was born to a young 18-year-old Englisher. She was not married, so she gave him up for adoption. And he was adopted by an Amish family in the same community that I lived in. This was in Buchanan County, Iowa, okay? I didn't know him then, but when I was 12, my family moved to southern Iowa. But about 3 years prior to that, when he was 7, his family moved to southern Iowa, the same community. So do you see how fate was already bringing us together? So we met in southern Iowa in a little Amish schoolhouse when I was 12. We were both 12 by then. He says it was love at first sight. I don't remember much, until later on in school. He really was like my knight in shining armor. I totally forgot to do something. Oh well, just bear with me. I actually have a picture of don't let me forget to do this. I have a picture of our family when we were just starting to come out of the Amish, okay? And then here's our current I was going to do the before and after, but don't let me forget. I'll show you the other picture on my phone. This is my family today, anyway. Not all of us. There's more grandkids now, but anyway, so 5th grade we met. Long story short, we got married, we got baptized into the Amish church. We had our three sons there on his parents' home farm. He had a job. We did chores in the barn every morning, every night. Life was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was good in a lot of ways. We were connected to our families. We had a good social life. But it was just empty in a lot of ways. Just empty. It was just the same cycle day after day after day. And nothing, it's really sad to say, but the most exciting thing that ever happened was weddings or funerals or when somebody had another baby. But that's it. Other than that, it was just, and I remember thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. There has got to be. And I started praying a dangerous prayer way back then as this little Amish lady. And I had no idea what I was praying, but I started praying that, God, if there's more of you, I want it. I must have it. Yes. And I prayed that for a couple of years and didn't even know really that my husband, I knew my husband wasn't like, he was, sometimes he felt depressed, and well, you can imagine, being adopted, there's a lot that comes with that. So he was kind of picked on always in the community. So he had, he was dealing with his own things, and we weren't even like super connected, because in the Amish you don't show or talk about your emotions. Nobody does. It's just you just deal with things. You kind of come a little bit like a robot, a little bit. That's where we were married. By then I forget how long we were married, probably 6 years maybe, because we had the 3 little boys. Another interesting thing in the Amish, there is no birth control. So you just have babies as fast as the Lord gives them to you. So, very quickly we had 3 little boys. My hands were so full some days, chores, and I just remember being very tired many times. But so I started praying that dangerous little prayer. My husband was restless. One day he came in and said, guess what? I called and I applied for a farm job. You don't you don't talk it over with your wife. The husband just does his thing. And I remember I felt kind of excited and super scared at the same time. Well, long story short, we ended up getting that farm job up here in Wisconsin. About 100 miles east, over by close to, anybody know where Bondwell or Shawano, Wisconsin is?
Yes.
Yeah. So we took that farm job. We lived outside an Amish community. We didn't join their church. We just needed some time to breathe, and we told our families we're not. Our families just, somebody died. They were so sad, and we were even still Amish, and they just thought it can't be that we even just moved out of the community. And my mom, when my mom got sad, she would get a little mean too. She would say mean things sometimes, and it hurt. It hurt a lot, but I knew that, I'm gonna do this with my husband. We're gonna do this on a trial. We're gonna check out this farm job. We took it. We were there for a year, and in some ways it was the best year, one of the best years of our life, because the first time, so we were not now a part of the Amish. We were still part of the Amish church, but we weren't members anywhere, which gave us just a little bit of freedom, and it felt like we were kind of newly married because we weren't living in the backyard of his mom and dad's home farm, and I wasn't going home to my family twice a week. That's how often my mom and my sisters would get together. So there again, it felt very liberating and like new, but also just scary and hard. And sometimes I clearly remember one day I don't know why I chose the bathroom of all places, probably to get away from the kids. And I just knelt there by the pot, stool, whatever you call it. What do the Englishers call it? What do you call it? Commode, whatever. And I remember it was like a pivotal moment, because I remember that day I knelt there and I just told God, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I miss my family. I want to go back. And if I could have persuaded my husband to go back, we would have. But he stood firm. He reminded me all of the reasons why you were doing this, and I didn't believe him at the time, but what choice did I have, right? Anyway, thank God now. He knew what he was doing. So we did that for a whole year. At the end of that year, we, again, both highly debated about just going back. It's just too hard. We miss our family. They still all think we're crazy, and just very lonely sometimes. It was very lonely. There was times in that year, on that farm job, where I had the 3 little boys, and there were times where I did not see another Amish person, or maybe any person except the people that we worked for, a man and a wife on the farm job. I wouldn't see anybody for 2 weeks. Now I think that could be okay sometimes. But back then, when you're stuck in the house, with 3 little boys, again, I did chores morning and night, and stayed busy, but just was very lonely sometimes. And again, just asking God, well, this is not what I had in mind. So, what, and just very kind of restless at times, and just a lot of crying out to God, like, again, there's got to be more, there's got to be more. This is still just very lonely and kind of unfulfilled, even though in some ways it was a lot better. So, at the end of that year, my husband too was like, yep, we don't want to join that church. There was a lot of things we didn't like. See, we still thought then that it's all about maybe finding the perfect church. Mm-hmm. So we thought, okay, we'll start one. And we did. So we moved again, because that's what the Amish do. They move a lot. And it's a lot to find a church that they like, or because every church's rules are different, right? So they keep moving to find this perfect church, or something that they like, or that where they can agree with. Well, this time we were on my husband wasn't a minister or anything, but we started this community with a minister and a deacon. So it was just the 3 of us families in the beginning, so we got to help make the rules, and that was really fun. We stayed very conservative. We were still Amish, okay? Still Amish. In fact, I think that would be the time to send around this picture. This was when we helped start this church. This was now kind of our dress code. You can pass that around, and I'll keep talking. And then don't forget to look at the after. That's the before, this is the after. Yeah. And if that goes away, I don't know if you're familiar with, Luann, will you kind of keep this picture going, so if it shuts off, you know how to. So the church we helped start, that was kind of our dress code, not just if some of you in here are familiar with, like, I know with Augusta Amish, like, when I was a little girl, it was like the long dresses and the black what do you call them?
Fun.
Bonnets, yeah, just, I sometimes say, about as ugly as you can make it. That's how I grew up as a little girl. So this was advanced. This, it's true. It's kind of true. So now we were advancing a little bit. My husband and I helped start this community, make the rules. We added 3 more children. We added the twins. Yes, Lila, right? We added the twins and another son in this community now.
He's here.
Ooh,
John.
John is here? Oh my gosh, John, get in here. John, come in here. Oh, he's in here.
He's occupied.
So, I will introduce him when he comes in. So, my daughter Luann and then her twin sister is, she's a nurse at Gunderson in La Crosse. Luann's a stay-at-home. Tell him what you do.
Stay home.
And what your husband does. What does your husband do?
He owns a fire protection business selling fire extinguishers, fire safety stuff to like
John and Brooke, come up
commercial
here.
restaurants.
Nice surprise. This is our youngest son, John Lamar. Yeah, and his girlfriend Brooke. I didn't know if any of you guys would come out to support me or not tonight. Okay. Okay, so where was I? So we helped start this community, right? And we grew, that community grew to about 12 families. We had a nice group of youth, as we called them, young folks. And it was fun. Life was really good in that community. My husband started, he had different various jobs, and for the first time we were doing pretty good financially. And it was just a close-knit community. We got together, we helped each other work, and for the first time we heard like the plan of salvation preached loud and clear. So up to that time, I feel like I was saved in the Amish church, but I was still terrified to die. And because of one of the ministers in that church, he preached salvation, and that was just wonderful. So we grew spiritually so much there. But all of a sudden, I'll never forget, on the way home from church one Sunday, I said to my husband, what we have here is almost too good to be true. And the very next day, we heard that the ministers are once again arguing, and there's trouble because of material things. So that's another time where, remember when I said if it's ever felt like the end, it felt like the end again. We were like, how is this possible? Here we are again. That's part of why we moved in the first place twice, because of, church stuff or material things, and we were just really disappointed and kind of despondent, and again wondered if we should just go back. So that, it just, can you get the picture of the pull, the constant pull? And our families, were not any more on board than they were before, even associating less with us because of the subtle change in dress they saw. They knew that we were like, they say you're getting like sometimes I know the words in Dutch, but I don't know how to say it. Like, how would you say fremdeling? like a new belief. They thought we were getting a new belief, which we were. We were upgrading our belief system, and even though they didn't know it, it was in a good way, But they thought we were like completely just falling away, and it was again very hard to see them truly believe that and think that we're lost. That was the hardest thing. One of the hardest things of coming out of the Amish is disappointing your parents. That is very, very hard. And I do write about that quite a bit in here. So there we were again. What are we going to do now? Again, it felt like the end. Everybody moved out one by one. The families moved out. And finally, it was just my husband and I. And even his parents had come and joined us at that community. So see, my husband, his parents that adopted him only had one. They couldn't have children, so they adopted him and one other girl. So they're not biological, but so it was just him and his sister. His sister had left the Amish 20 years prior to us, and now here we're leaving too. Can you imagine what his parents went through? So, but here they had come up. They were excited about this new community that we started. they came, they were part of our lives. I'm so grateful for that because our children got to experience having grandparents in their lives for about 5 years. We lived there for 5 years and life was so good. And then until it all fell apart again. And then they did go back. They did go back to the community that they had come from, the Amish community where we too, and they were very sad. They were very sad, and we decided we again heard about somehow, I don't know, all I know is God directed and ordered our steps, because once again we found out of a community that they still called themselves Amish, but they were even more advanced than we had been at this community. They even had radios and they had cameras, and we were like, how can this be? And we were a little skeptical about it, but we went and visited a time or two, and finally we decided this is it. We're going to take our 6 children, and we moved all the way out to Bonners Ferry, Idaho, and joined this group out there. Yes. And we lived out there for almost 8 years. And that's where we kind of, as a church, I'll never forget, one night, it was still very Amish because there was still like a bishop, that we all kind of answered to. And one night he called all the men together, and they called it a prayer meeting, and us women, I don't know why we couldn't go, but anyway, I was very suspicious what was going on, and I was right. My husband came home and he said, us men agreed, and we all agreed that it is not wrong to drive cars.
Oh.
So all of a sudden, here we get to have cars. And so that just opened up a whole, realm. Now we could start, slipping out to conferences or going out on date nights and things like that. It was just wonderful. For me, those 7 years were glorious. They were a glorious time of coming out of, getting rid of like the head covering and the Amish dress, and that's where I did all my clothes change gradually over those 7 years. My husband, on the other hand, again, I didn't realize how much he struggled, because he still felt, he also, we both grew a lot spiritually, and our children did too, and some of them were even baptized out there, I think, but once again, there was kind of, we got to a point where we felt like, okay, they said they don't have rules. There's no rules, but there were a lot of unspoken rules. Like sometimes our boys, I don't know if you remember this, John, but I know Dennis does. Our boys would be ready to go to church, and it was maybe hot in summer, and they came out all innocent in their shorts, right? And we would make them go change because even though there was no rules, there were unspoken rules. So that went on for a while, and finally, it just felt like we had hit another ceiling, right? We've gone as far as we can here, and some of the children weren't that happy anymore there either. My husband wasn't, but how was he going to convince me? We were leading worship at the church at the time. We were youth leaders, and we were very involved in that church. And the church had grown to where there literally was standing room only on a Sunday morning when we led worship, and I loved it. I was in my glory. But some of the children weren't happy. My husband wasn't happy. And if I'm honest, there were times where I too just felt, I don't know what the word would be, like there was just still so much turmoil, too much turmoil still, like things that didn't make sense, and just there, so I just kept praying that same little prayer. Okay, God, if there's more, I still want it. When do you stop praying that? I don't know. I haven't yet, so never. Right? But hold on for the ride, right? Because you don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. Lost my train of thoughts. Where was I? Oh, do you guys remember the family fast we did? Were you
Yeah.
too?
I didn't make it.
Yeah.
You did pretty
You
good.
bought me a candy bar the morning of to brag me. Make it all
Brag
day.
me?
What?
You bought me a candy bar that morning and said if you make it all day, you can have this tonight.
Was that the last day?
Yeah, that's
Anyway.
the last day.
So when some of the children started not being happy there and kind of getting into a little bit of trouble, my husband and I sought out mentors. And they were older, they had raised their children for the most part, and we told them what's going on, and they just told us, well, this, while you may still be pretty happy here, this little country church just might not cut it for your children. And I remember being kind of shocked and like, well, you could maybe just shape up, kids, whatever, you know. But so he said, just do a family fast and seek the Lord as a family. So we did. We gathered the children and we told them that this is what we're going to do. You guys can choose what you want to fast from. I don't know if we even gave you guys a choice. You know, we should have, but we probably didn't back then because the Amish, they tell their kids what to do and they do it, right? So, but we let them all choose what they want to fast from. And I can't remember what. Do you guys remember
I
what?
had food.
Food. I remember not eating birthday.
Well, goodness. This was 30 days, so you ate in 30
Oh.
days.
Oh,
I
I
thought
see.
that. We did it for 30 days.
No, we
So
did
I
not
think-
do that.
We
No,
did
some-
a 24-hour one.
We did different ones, where it was food maybe, but this was like for 30 days we were going to give something up. Kind of like some of you do Lent, right? Yeah, so you're familiar with that. Yeah, so this was like kind of like that, but we just called it a fast to kind of seek God on what should we do now, because again it kind of felt like the end, right? So that's the third time now. So I know some of the kids did TV because by then we even had TV, and some of them just did like one meal a day, I remember. And I wanted to make sure I do it right, so I fasted coffee. And it was awful. And I don't know if I could do that again for a whole month. And I still had to go to work. I had a job, so I had to go to work. And I remember some days I just had no energy. And about 2 days before the fast, I throw this in for funny, I wouldn't recommend it. But 2 days before the fast was over, I went online and I ordered a new coffee pot that grinds the beans and makes coffee. And on the last day of the fast, I made it and I used it. But you know what? Coffee has never tasted quite right since. So you hate coffee? Oh my goodness. No. But out of that 30-day fast, we sense God saying, your time is up. It's time to move on. And so this time we were just like, okay, what now anyway? But it was more of a hopeful, and we realized that, okay, we don't have to move somewhere for a church. God is everywhere. Just choose a place and go, and you'll find a church. And that's exactly what we did. So we loaded our 6 children up again, and we moved all the way back to Wisconsin again, because my husband's sister lives here. So she found us a place to rent until we could sell our property out there. The other thing that determined moving back, the economy was super depressed out there. The children were getting older, they wanted jobs, and there were no jobs. Even the little bitty job I had, there was a lot of competition. I had to fight for that job. So that was another determining factor. Like, let's go back where we don't have to be broke all the time. And so we sold our property out there, and we came back here and we rented a while, and then we bought land, and we've now since then we built like a house and finished putting our kids through school, and then we built our dream house, and now we're empty nesters, and now the grandkids are coming, and life is amazing. So it was a crazy journey, and we've been completely out of the Amish for about, I would say, close to 25-ish years. When we moved back here, and I think, was it 14 years in February? 13 or 14 years in February was the first time that we didn't go to some kind of an Amish, somewhere where there were Amish in the church. Like the church that we left out west, it was Amish, it was Mennonite, it was Englishers, it was just a mixture of people. But there were still unspoken rules for like the people that used to be Amish or whatever. So when we moved back to Wisconsin, that was the first time that we weren't affiliated with any Amish. And so then, there's just something about when you have the Bible for your rules and your roadmap instead of some man-made rules, that you can just kind of continue to grow. So I hope we do that for the rest of our life. So that's the short version of our story, and I left out, a lot of details, but the picture I want to paint is how we zigzagged across the U.S., to find freedom and to find the whole truth and get our kids out of that system so they don't have to go through what we did. So that's my story. And I do write about it, just not it's just not my life story yet. Someday, I think, but yeah. So I think, okay, does it half an hour? I'm going to open it up for questions now. Don't be shy. Yes.
Do you still interact with Amish very closely, I guess?
Well, as closely as we're allowed to. Yes,
Okay.
as closely as we're allowed to. Like, I was able, when we moved back here to Wisconsin, so in the meantime, my mom and most of my siblings, my mom and dad and most of my siblings moved out of that Bloomfield, Iowa Amish community and moved up here to Wisconsin too, to the Shawano area. So then when we moved back to Wisconsin, now I'm just 2.5 hours from my Amish family. And I was like, well, I'm not going to sit here this close to them.
Yeah.
This is not just coincidence. And my dad was getting older. He had diabetes. He wasn't drinking anymore. He overcame that. But because of his, he damaged his liver and he got diabetes really bad and he was very sick and he died of a heart attack. And I just felt this deep desire to have a relationship with him before he dies. I never had that growing up because it's just not, you're one of 9 kids. What are you going to do, right? So I did, but the clothing thing was a huge barrier. Like, we were forbidden to come home dressed. I could never go home dressed like this. So I had this brilliant idea to write them a letter and ask them like what it would take for a relationship, to have relationship. And they wrote me back and said that if I wear my Amish garb, of course, you should know that, basically kind of thing. And I pondered and prayed about it, and I was like, I just don't know if I can do that. Furthermore, I don't have any anymore. So I wrote them back again and said, well, I don't really have Amish clothes anymore, but what if I just wore some kind of a dress and I put my hair up and I wore something, covered my hair somehow. So they agreed to that. I guess you could say we found a compromise. And that worked beautifully for about 5 years. I went home about once a month, and I had a relationship with my dad. And this might sound funny to you. He would sit in his chair, I would sit on the couch beside him, and it's not like he struck up a conversation with me, by no means. But sometimes he would chuckle at what I said. And to me, that was like huge. Like, he acknowledged what I said. And of course, my sisters were there too, so it wasn't just me and him. But so I had that for about 5 years before he passed away. And my mom has mellowed out a lot. And so to this day, I have a very good relationship with my mom and my sisters. My brothers pretend like I don't exist. And that still hurts sometimes. But you know what? I have 4 sons now. I don't need my 4 brothers. I mean, I do, but I'm not going to go chase that, so. But actually, God showed me that one time when I was grieving that, my 4 brothers and I have nothing to do with them, and why? And he said, well, you have 4 sons now who would do anything for you. Do you really need that relationship? Sometimes we have to pick our battles. We really do. Yeah. Okay, yes.
As curious as we are about the Amish life, and that you have a relationship with your family, shunning is my first question. And secondly, does your Amish family have questions for you about us Englishers?
They don't very often have questions. It's just always been that way, that the Englishers, they're good, it's okay for them to be English. Well, this is at least how it was explained to me. It's okay for them to be English because they weren't born into the Amish. But if you're born into the Amish, there's no way that you should be able to leave. So they don't question about the English. No. Or I don't think so. We never did, yeah. The shunning is alive and well. Yes, very much. But
you weren't.
So. Yes, we still are. We still are to some degree. For instance, when my father passed away, okay, think about the good relationship I had with him and my mom and my sisters. Well, what do you think happened the day of his funeral? So here we took our children all came. The girls wore dresses, put their hair up, But that, they still, they use people like us as a warning for the rest. So everybody filed through to fix their, get their plates, because there's always food wherever you go with the Amish. But they set us at a separate table in the middle of everybody. We were all gathered around there, and they served us our food, which I told the children, we're special. They're serving us. This isn't nothing to be mad about, but we knew why they were doing it. So that's, and even to this day, my nieces and nephews are getting married one after the other, and very seldom are we invited or to family gatherings or anything like that. But I'm at the point where I'm just so okay with that. They're all the same anyway. So yeah, very much the shunning. Yes.
So do you think any of your nieces or nephews or relatives deep down would like to be able to do what you did?
I have 2 sisters that would love to, and they talk to me a lot. And I have nieces and nephews that have left, a handful now, a handful of them. 2 nieces are just in the process of leaving. Yeah. So it's exciting, yeah. But some just never will, probably. Yeah. Yes?
I don't know much about the Amish community to begin with, but my question is more about your relationship with God. It sounds like you were communicating with your father before you left the community, because that's what kind of led you to. So my question is that normal for Amish people? And if not, how did you start doing that? Like, how did you start talking to God?
That is a really good question. Very good question. And there's 2 answers to that. The first answer is my mom, because I believe what she went through with my dad. She was a strong believer. And she told us, it's not, you can't just know about God. You have to have a relationship, and you have to pray your own words, because the Amish just do the recited prayers, for the most part. She would tell us, you have to learn, you have to pray your own words. I jokingly say now that she wanted us saved, but not this saved. It's not very nice, but. So, and then the other answer to that question is, when I was 18 years old, I got the measles.
Oh.
And I was deathly sick. I kind of wanted to die, but I knew I was not ready. And so that scared me. And I was so sick that I had days at home alone. The others would go on about their way, their life, whatever. And I couldn't read, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't drink anything because they were in my inside of my throat. I was so miserable. And somehow through that, I don't know, I didn't even realize what happened at the time, but I started praying to God. And looking back, my life just changed from then on. I was like, I threw away, I had a big radio hidden, and I had pictures that I wasn't supposed to have, and I went and got rid of all that stuff, and because I thought I needed to, and I did in that setting. I needed to get rid of it. But now I can have all that stuff again. But so I think I truly got saved in the Amish church. And I don't know, I do believe some of them are, but what I fear is that they think when they become a member of the Amish church, I think they think that is salvation. And that is sad, and it worries me about them. But my mom was different. She was very different. And my dad was saved too. And I because one time, he very seldom would he call and say anything when we were in the process of leaving. But I remember this one time he did. And it meant so much to me that he cared enough to call. And even if it was like warning us about what we're doing. And I remember just asking him, well, Dad, would you say that you're saved? I decided I'm just going to be brave and ask him. And he paused a little bit on the other end of the phone, and finally he said, yes, I would say I am, but I sure wouldn't go around telling people. That was my dad. Where the Bible says to live a quiet and restful life, that was my dad. I have fond memories of him, yes.
Wasn't it very uncommon for your family as Amish to have your picture taken with all your faces shown? And second question, when did you start wearing jewelry and how comfortable were you with it at first?
And tonight I forgot to wear my earrings. I still forget sometimes. What was the first question? When did we start taking pictures? You mean because of that one I sent around there?
That was uncommon, wasn't it, to have
Yes.
faces shown in
Yes.
pictures?
And that was actually taken by my husband's, how would you describe Marvin? Like kind of his
Always.
driver, his friend, he worked for him, and he had a camera, so we didn't have cameras back then either.
No.
So that's a very special picture, and I want to actually get it printed out so I have it for the comparison here. But so no, because they are not supposed to have their pictures taken. Yeah. And then the second question, when did I start wearing jewelry? When we lived out in that church out west. One day I took the twin girls. Which birthday was that? Do you remember? 13 maybe?
Yeah, I think 13.
For their 13th birthdays, the twins and I went to the mall an hour and a half away, and we all got our ears pierced. And so then, we started wearing jewelry then, and yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm still not a huge jewelry person. I like it. It gets in my way, you know. But that's when. So that many years ago. Yes.
Well, I have several questions, but
Okay.
I'm gonna, one of them was the picture thing.
Okay.
And what is the reasoning though for no pictures? What is the belief?
They
That's
base
one of
it.
them.
Yeah, they base it out of a verse in the Bible that says to have no image of graven image. Yeah, it's based on that. It's based on that. But what I want you to understand though is like, so your community, Augusta, that would be completely forbidden. But then you have communities like Northern Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania. They have phones. It's not. It varies so much from one Amish community to the next.
I think Augusta's pretty strict.
They're very strict. Do you remember hearing about the young man that was killed at the sawmill, at his own sawmill?
That's our neighbor, yeah.
That was my first cousin.
That was your first
That
cousin.
was Ida's oldest son. And
Okay.
I remembered playing with him and his siblings when we were young. So I told my husband, let's go to the viewing, at least what they call a viewing. But we heard, my mom took it upon herself to tell us that they don't want people like us there. That's how strict Augusta is. So there's the shunning again, you know. So we didn't go, but
No.
I was sad because I would have wanted to go and just pay my
Pay respect.
respects. Yeah. So
Another question is I've heard, and I don't know for sure, but do the Amish families have their own Bibles? Are they permitted to have their own Bibles and study? Or is just the bishop, does he just kind of take care of everything and tell kind of people what he wants?
again, it depends so much from one
One
community
area
to
to
the next.
another, okay.
So where we grew up in southern Iowa, my husband and I got baptized in that church, we read High German. Our Bibles were, well, that's what we used for Sundays. But then we were allowed for Sunday school, we had Bibles that had the High German on one side, but then the English on the other side.
Okay.
So we had both. And then my mom got us all our own Bibles that were all just King James Version, but all English.
Okay.
So we were allowed to, but we still were never encouraged to read it too much. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes.
just leave it to the elders, you know. You don't have
decipher it for
to.
you.
Yes, you don't need to know. And my husband was the type that he would ask, well, but why this or why that? And they would just say, well, it's just always been this way. You just learn to even if you ask questions, you didn't get answers. And that is one thing that drove us to search it out for ourselves. Yes.
Is the ordinance common to all Amish communities in contrast with community rules that are agreed upon by the bishop and the elders? So I don't know of any Amish around here that drive a car or have a television. or any electricity at all.
No, the ones through here are by far more strict. But then if you go to northern Indiana, for some reason, it's just like, my husband has step siblings from northern Indiana. They are the most fun, crazy, we have so much fun with them. And they're like, they might not have smartphones, but they have flip phones. But some of them have smartphones too, so it just depends.
Did you get to experience Rumspringa?
That's always a good one. We did not.
They
I
don't
mean,
around here either.
No, we still did, but we got punished so severely it was hardly worth it. They would ground us for weeks if we did anything.
What is it?
Well, like again, northern Indiana, Ohio, they literally allow their young folks when they turn 16 to go and experience the English world for however long they want to, and then they get to decide if they want to come back. But you know what's crazy? Most of their young people go back. Most of them.
It'll be awfully uncomfortable.
So I don't know. There must be something about allowing them to go and, yeah. Most of them go back and join the Amish too. They do, and I think they go out there for the wrong reasons. You know, they go out there just to be, get drunk and do whatever they want. Of course, that's not fulfilling. You know, it's not supposed to be. So, yeah. So no, we didn't really get to do that, but my husband and I still sowed a couple wild oats.
There's a community down by is Coral City. They're now allowed to use battery-powered lighting in the homes and buildings.
They are.
So they can't even sell the dealer down there said you can't even sell a gas lantern anymore.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then in Augusta, the only refrigeration is by cutting ice in the winter.
Yep.
But if you go to Rock Falls, they will use gasoline-powered refrigeration systems.
Okay. So see how it changes from one community to the next? Yeah. So when I was a little girl in Buchanan County, before I was 12, that's how the only cold refrigeration or whatever we had was like the chunks of ice that we put away ourselves. So very primitive. Outhouses, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. No running water in the house.
An interesting story regarding the electric lighting. I said, well, how do you charge the batteries? Oh, he took me to the back of the shop, and here's a bank where you can put multiple of these batteries. It's the same you use in power tools. And I said, okay, well, that's fine, but what powers the charger? Well, here's the charger. Well, what powers the charger? Well, I have an inverter. And I said, well, what powers the inverter? Well, I have 12-volt batteries under the bench. I said, okay, well, what charges the 12-volt batteries? Oh, well, I have solar panels on the roof. And there's a digital display showing the voltage increasing and decreasing as the clouds go by the sun.
They are the Amish are probably some of the smartest, most creative people you'll ever find. Because they have to be to survive. I always say if hard times come, I know where to go.
That's happened around here, I think, when the electricity's been off for a long time, the Amish bring food to
the rest of us, to us Englishers, right? So it's interesting. Any more questions? We can take a couple more. Yes, okay.
I'd like to talk a little bit about how all your changing in your life affected your children as they grew up.
Well, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast soon, and I'm going to interview my children. So I'll have to get that to all of you somehow. Do you two want to take the stab at that?
I think the hardest part was just that, so there's 6 of us, and how old is Dwayne? How old is Dwayne?
Dwayne's 31.
31.
Yes.
So the oldest is 31, and then John's 22, or 21. So 10-year difference.
10-year gap, yeah.
I think the hardest part was that the oldest one was Amish, considered Amish for a lot more years than John was. So they had like completely different upbringings. So for us siblings, like to relate during our childhood was really hard because like prom. My brother was not allowed to go to prom, like
not even go to
not even
school period.
Yeah, no. Yeah. But then by the time my sister and I got there, it's like, well, we can talk about it, and you can go. John, yeah, you're going to prom. Like, it was not even like, so it was just like, and things like a cell phone, absolutely not. You're like the oldest, you cannot have that. You cannot go hang out with friends at this time. You cannot do this. And then by the time it was my sister, I was like, well, let's like set boundaries and rules, and probably you can. And then when John, it was like, I mean, he couldn't do whatever he wanted, but it was like, yeah, here you can have a cell phone at this age. We got it all figured out now. So it was like, by the time John was old, so it took them like all 5 of us kids to figure out how to like parent.
Absolutely.
So I think our oldest brother definitely had it like the most strict, the most Amish, and then like as it trickled down, it was like less and less and less, which I think it was always hard because our oldest brothers would be like, well, that's not fair, like, that's not fair, and but we were evolving and changing for like 10 years there, where it was just completely, we would always laugh because every month it would be like, hey, here's the family rules, and it always changed. It was like, this month you can say, oh my gosh. Like, this month you can wear tennis shoes. I vividly remember it. So it was like every month, okay, family rules. Oh my gosh.
So would it be fair to say it was rough? It was rough on the children.
But I think now we're all so close because we're like, even though we weren't that close growing up, 'cause we couldn't relate to each other. Now we're like, who else can relate to that growing up? Nobody else knows what that was like. So.
Yeah, that's you said it very well. Do you have something to add, John? And you probably remember the least of being Amish anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you were, how old were you when we moved back here?
I was in 3rd grade.
Yeah, so you remember the least, and besides, by the time John, the last one, came along, he was like, I'm not making any waves, I'm just gonna, he was the easiest kid of all of them, I think, but probably because we had our parenting figured out,
Figured it out by him.
Yeah, so I think, and I can tell that, our oldest son, he's still the most reserved, he's still single at 31, and, so it was not easy on them always, but sometimes we kept reminding them that, and I think it's good for us, and as a family, we just talk about where we've been and why we came out and why we did the things we did, and Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. You had one too, didn't you?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if the different communities like know each other or converse, or when you were leaving from one community to the next, did you come there with like a stigma where they already knew you were this way, and and on top of that, how do they deal with each other's differing opinions of like
so different lifestyles?
Right.
Yeah. Well, they don't always do the best, and I feel like, I don't know if you guys know this, but one thing that's really sad is about the Amish is gossip is rampant. But I always say it's because they don't really have that much to talk about except each other, And as far as the stigma thing, in a lot of churches, if you wanted to move to another church, you had to get like almost like a written paper that you were in good standing with the church that you're leaving. And if there was anything that you weren't, it was written out and sent to the next church with you. Yeah. So stigma or whatever you want to call that, they keep track of each other very well. There's not much room for shenanigans without being found out, yes.
What was your favorite thing when you left the community? Was it a certain item, electricity? What exactly was
that is easy. I love my car. I love my car so much. Yes. My car, and I think like finally having like a washer and a dryer, because when the children, I had 6 children under the age of 10, and I would have to go down in a dinky basement with a wringer washer and do all that laundry by hand while the kids were upstairs doing God knows what. I would hear a bump and run up, and it was awful. And so I loved finally some of those modern conveniences.
Now, as a grandma, you love a baby monitor.
Yes, and now she comes up, where was this stuff when I needed it?
She always is raving about the baby monitor.
What if I could have had a baby monitor monitor in the basement, right? That would have saved me a million steps. Yeah, but no, or a washer and dryer, then I would have needed the baby monitor maybe. Yeah, so some things like that, and to this day, I don't take it for granted. When I push that button on my washer or dryer, I just smile. Because the laundry was endless with 6 children and a husband and chores, barn chores, so yeah. And even with the twins, I still used a lot of cloth diapers, so it was never ending.
Yeah.
But I never had to watch my weight back then. So there's always a silver lining. Okay, should we be done, Dawn? What do you think? Couple more? Okay, all right, go ahead.
So if do all the Amish in one little, what do you call them, group or
Community?
church? Community. If they want to get married, do they have to marry within that community, or can they go to another community, another state?
They can, as long as they, I have to think of the English word here again, as long as they, you guys don't know it either, fellowship with each other. No, dean, as long as they dean with each other is the Amish word. So it would be, as long as they fellowship. See, even the Amish don't all fellowship with each other. Like the Blair, the Augusta Amish would never fellowship with like those northern Indiana ones. They would never be allowed to go marry a girl from that community. And I don't even know, I'm guessing Blair and Augusta probably are close enough similar that they would be allowed to go find a girl there.
Do the
So
parents match them up, or?
not really, no.
Okay.
No, that's pretty much up to the individuals, yeah, for the most part, yeah. It's a wonder, right? Yeah. So, yeah, it just, the one thing that I'll always want to stress is how it varies from one community to the next. It's just, it's a big difference. And that can all depend on what the bishop or the ministers decide, they make the rules. And sometimes the minister's wives help. Yes, you had a question.
And who decides who becomes the bishop?
They do that by lot. Do you know what that means? So they would take, so it happens when they have communion, which is all day church. You sit all day long. And at the end of that day, the members of the church will take a vote, will all vote of who they think it should be, and all those little slips of paper go in, they keep track of it. And at the end of that day, if I can say it right, they will take like 3 books, and it's like their Amish church Osbund, and they put them on a table here in front of the whole church, and they draw one slip out of all those votes. Well, you have to have like 3 votes or 4 to get into the lot, and then they draw one name, and there's one name on there, and they put it in one of these books, and then they mix these books up, and then, nobody knows where the paper is, and then they all come forward, whoever's in the lot, they come forward and they draw a random book, and whoever's book has the slip of paper in there, their name isn't even on it, it's just a slip of paper, then he is the bishop.
And how long are they a bishop?
For the rest of their
For
life,
life?
until they die. That's how they make their ministers too. Well, once in a while they'll take it away from them, depending, like if they do something, if they just fall into sin over and over and over or something, they will sometimes take it away from them and say, okay, you can't be a minister or a bishop anymore. Yes?
Were you able to continue your education after grade 8?
No.
You got your.
But I did. I did then. Yeah. Oh, was it for me? Yeah, as a whole they're not, but I did then. After we moved back here and my kids were all in school, I was like, oh my goodness, the possibilities are endless. So I did that and worked at school a while where the kids were at and had a few random jobs and then I started writing and doing this, and I love this. Yes.
Was it hard to learn how to drive? We grow up watching our parents and all of that, and was it hard to go from horse and buggy and never seeing that modeled to all of a sudden?
Yes, I cried the day I went to get my license. I was sure I was going to fail. It was hard. And for the longest time, even if I was on the highway, when a semi came, I would just automatically like, Ernest said, you're just like a horse that shies away. Ernest is my husband. But now today it's like, well, the kids still say I'm not really fit to drive. I just say I keep my guardian angels very busy.
Red lights are optional.
Sometimes. Yes.
What about language and, you mentioned Dutch and you
Yeah.
mentioned High German and all this, but you speak very good English
Well,
and all that.
thank you.
So how, were you taught that as a child or?
The English?
Were you
Okay.
brought up with English or
That's a
not?
really good question. So so obviously Dutch, the Pennsylvania Dutch was our primary language. And then when we went to, from the day we were babies, we sat through a 5-hour long church service. And so we picked up the High German, and didn't start reading that until we were probably older though. But then when we went to school, when we went to kindergarten or school, so the whole school was how did they do that? Like, I think from the time school started in the fall, see, they have rules for everything. So for the time school started in the fall up to Christmas, everybody had to speak English in the school. So us new ones, so the little kindergartens pick it up. So that's how we learned it. So by Christmas we learned quite a few words, and then from Christmas to the end of the school year, we couldn't speak English at school. Then we had to speak Dutch. Except for during classes we spoke English, but recess and stuff, then we had to speak.
What about it in your home? With
No,
your
always Pennsylvania Dutch. Always, yeah. Yep. So yeah, it's just a lot of people say I have that accent, which makes me self-conscious sometimes. But
So your children are bilingual as well?
yep.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, we purposely kept the language. Yeah, and I thought I would automatically teach my grandkids, but now for some reason it doesn't really happen. I don't know why. I don't know.
Because we don't speak it in our own
Yeah,
house.
we don't speak it enough anymore, I guess. So yeah. Is she tired of it?
She's
But-
tired.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm going to end it because it's been an hour. But I will gladly come to any one of your libraries, churches, whatever. I have cards up here if you want to take my information. Because as you can tell, I love doing this.